Welcome to Higher Intelligence, smart takes on AI for the next generation campus. I'm JC Bonilla, EdTech executive, data scientist, and educator. Every episode, we break down what actually is happening at the intersection of AI and higher education. No hype, no fear, just signal. Today is a different episode. I'm not going deep into one single theme per se, and it is a semi-structured conversation. Today, I am asking my co-host of Generation AI to sit down with me, catch up, and go deep into probably 4 disparate stories. To bring them all together, I need to bring probably an expert who can come and tell me why has Apple dramatically changed how devices in AI will operate. Without my co-host, I cannot not have a conversation about Elon Musk. So we'll be talking about SpaceX and how they just spent billions of dollars to create the next phone company. Anthropic just dropped code review and is basically changing yet again how software development is done in the planet. And of course, Andrew Karpathy could not just basically sit on the sidelines, but last weekend he dropped probably the most interesting open source tool of the month. So we have a full episode with probably one of my favorite persons in the world. Welcome, Ardis Kadiu. How you doing, my friend?
Hey, JC, how's it going? Doing great. Thanks for having me.
Very good. For those of you who do not know who Ardis Kadiu is, so Ardis is the founder of Element 451. Element 451, you heard it, mentioned here sometimes, is an AI native CRM and student engagement platform that is redefining how higher education handles student engagement. Ardis is no longer the CEO of the company, and for the past 6 months, he has been running additional products, companies, and doing a really interesting journey in the AI Idea Lab. So here's an opportunity to come and catch up with Ardis, talk about Generation AI. Oh, did I also mention Ardis was my co-host? We co-hosted Generation AI for 103 episodes. We had a fantastic Nerdfest over a year or 2 years, and here we are reconnecting. So welcome to my mic again. And now this is my mic, not a shared mic. And let's catch up, my friend. First, what is Andy AI? Because I got to tell you, brilliant name. And people will connect the dots after you explain what is that you're building specifically. What is the problem that you're solving with Andy AI, man?
Yeah. So, hey, it's great being back, man. It's I've been kind of heads down building now for the last 60 days or so. And it's been, it feels like it's been an eternity because like time, it just goes, or maybe rather the other way around. It's like it goes really, really quick. So it's been great.
You do live in the time dimension of AI. So 6 months in AI are an eternity. Literally.
Yeah. You're right. It's like there's just been so much happening and things are like I've been so productive that when you think about it through the lens of kind of the old way they were doing things, the old way meaning like 6 months ago, I'm like, holy shit, this is like it's like in the dark ages, right?
But by the way, for those of you who are on video, Ardis looks great. Very relaxed, super fit. I think even your wife is super happy how you're showing up at home. So I don't know. Before we go into Andy, talk to us about your rhythm, right? So how is life?
Life has changed, right?
Yeah.
Life has changed. Not having to manage a 100-person company and getting back into and not having a calendar that is back to back to back. It kind of gives you a little different perspective on life. And now certain things are a little different for me.
Yeah.
So getting back to that individual kind of taking care of myself and, changing the lifestyle, I think it's been super, super beneficial. But, it's like I couldn't do that for very long. I did it for maybe 4 weeks in December and then early January. And then I was like, damn, I got to get back into it. So that's, so I've been coding now, but I don't have to worry about it because it's one of those things where you're solving problems. Like you just love it. And like, you just keep going and going and going. And that's yeah.
Well, tell us about that problem that you're solving with Andy AI. What is Andy AI? What problem are you solving? Yeah.
So Andy AI is this, this problem that I saw, and we're calling it family intelligence, right? And it's this idea that you're a parent and you're managing everything in your head, from schedules to reminding your kids to, to allergies, to handing kids off to babysitters, to when the schedule is, to school stuff, to athletics, to all of these things. Like you're managing this incredible, work and this incredible schedule, and then reminding, it's like, okay, I need to nudge the kids around homework, et cetera, et cetera. So we're kind of solving all of that with Andy, and we're calling it family intelligence, right? So all of that is an AI first product, which kind of takes care of all those things, right? It manages nudges, you can talk to it, it handles calendars, it handles scheduling, and then on top of that, it also is an AI, kid-safe AI, so kids can interact with it, and rather than jumping on ChatGPT, they can interact with it, through Andy, and it's age appropriate. So there is baked in developmental psychology that we're building right now. And the first thing that I was telling you, I'm like, hey, I'm working on prompt optimization and all of these things behind the scenes. So that's really the exciting part, is that ChatGPT and all these general AIs, they're not built for kids, right? And you see that, kids are using them and they're getting different answers and they're getting adult answers, et cetera, et cetera. But then parents cannot have visibility into it as well. So one of the problems that we saw, at least from my family, was Noah and Scarlett, they want to use AI. They're using AI, but like I couldn't see what they were doing on ChatGPT, what kind of questions they were asking, what kind of signals they were getting, and things like that. So with Andy, parents have visibility, and depending on age groups, right? So the older you get, like the less you get summaries and like you get signals and things like that, rather than just, all the transcripts. So that's kind of the problem that we're solving, like this family intelligence.
That's great. By the way, the only bad thing about this is, why didn't you do this 2 years ago when I was at the chaos of family intelligence, or the lack thereof? Because it's a real stress point in many family units, specifically with young ones. And I appreciate the work that you're doing here. So kudos to you and your co-founders on this product. Best of luck. Super exciting. So keep us posted. Now, there's this whole AI Idea Lab. It sounds like you have a second thing going on in parallel or sequential, but it sounds more researchy in nature, like a research operation or a portfolio studio type of thing. So tell us about the other thing that you're doing as well.
Yeah, so AI Idea Lab is actually the umbrella of the incubation of a lot of these ideas, right? Because I knew that the first thing is like, hey, I want to be into business to consumer, which moves really fast. So I wanted to do B2C, and that's what Andy is about, and the very different problem that we're solving there. But then I'm like, okay, I have all of these problems that I'm seeing on the enterprise side, and there's other opportunities and other companies and founders that I need to work with. So AI Idea Lab is a portfolio of AI projects and companies that fall under that umbrella. Andy is one of them that's part of it, but we're building other ones. I'm building other ones as well in parallel. And obviously there's TBD on a couple of those right now. They're in the incubation phase of it, but that's kind of the idea here. And it's all about agentic AI, right? So AI Idea Lab is like, how do you take agentic AI and how do you kind of put it into real world use cases to build companies, or to even build, projects that are open source, or that are just not, they might not be commercially viable, but they're kind of experimentations.
Very exciting. So does that mean that if I have an idea on an agentic product, I can come and pitch you, and maybe AI Idea Lab could, go arm in arm with me and co-develop? Is that also a version of the portfolio you're building?
Yeah, I mean, if you have one, yeah, let's do it.
Well,
But
let me tell you about the idea we have.
I don't need just idea people, like we need builders.
Speaking of ideas, 6 months ago, probably last time you and I did something like this, and your mind today, 6 months, you look great, as I said. It seems like this change has been very rewarding to you. But intellectually, where is your brain today, knowing that the world was agentic when you left, but so many things are happening? So can you just kind of catch me up with, where do you see all these signals in the state of AI. So what is your, and I know this could be a half hour type of conversation.
Yeah.
Like your 1-2 minutes of what is the state of AI today, and kind of how that's changed from the past 6 months where you probably did something similar. Tell people the state of AI, right?
So things have changed dramatically, and they've changed dramatically over the last 2 months. I would say 3 months, right? Since mid-December, people went into break, and then agentic coding became so interesting during that time. So the models got really, really good. There was a bunch of models that got released, Opus 4.5, and then in early January, February, Opus 4.6 got released, and then Codex. And so coding became basically solved in this time, and folks were being so productive. There was just so much work happening around agentic coding that over the last 3 months now, we are seeing a 10x or even 100x productivity of coding and folks doing things. All of the products like Lovable and Replit, et cetera, all this vibe coding, they've migrated, they've moved beyond just, producing things like small artifacts to actually building real products and getting so good that no longer, if you haven't looked at any of that stuff over the last month, like I would highly recommend you go back and look at it. So now coding has become part of, and it being, or agentic coding is hugely integrated into enterprises, and builders like myself are benefiting tremendously because we can do work in like a day that we couldn't do in like 3 months before, right? So that has changed. And as part of that, because coding is kind of the perfect model for agents, right? It's because they can validate things and they can run on a loop and they can use tools and they can kind of verify themselves. Now agents are becoming more and more kind of capable. So 2026 is actually the year where agents, come in and take over and become useful and take over the work that people were doing before, right? So yes, last year we talked about it a little bit, but models weren't quite there. This year it's truly transformational, and that's where my head is at, right? So this year the productivity has gone tremendously up of individual people, right? It's gone up 10, 20%. But also what I'm seeing, and as I talk to a lot of different founders, or I talk to other folks who are in the VC or the capital markets, and I talk to other people in kind of the enterprise, and they're trying to do work, the productivity on the enterprises has not caught up, right? So that's really interesting to see as well. So everybody's talking about, it's like, holy shit, like the market is crashing or the SaaS apocalypse is happening. And I'm sure you covered that before, because Claude Cowork came out and now it's able to have a lot of skills for all of these different things. So, where my head is at is I'm actually, as the builder, I'm seeing these two separate and two moving trajectories, which are, going at very different speeds. The individual productivity, AI has become, the 10x or 100x in productivity. However, that is not happening in the enterprise level, right? So enterprises are still kind of messing around. They're maybe adding a little bit of productivity, but it's not being transformational to the way that you want them. So it's not compounding because it's not being really, thoughtful on how to change that. You still have founders today where like their teams are not even using agentic coding, and it's like, okay, what the hell are you doing? So it's going a lot slower at the enterprise level, and that's really top of mind for me right now.
You see sectors where this is actually different paces, because true to the Black Friday February that the SaaS companies saw in February, right, with price drops because all this proliferation on SaaS models and agents. So also companies like Salesforce and ServiceNow, Atlassian, they saw drops in their stock prices. Are you seeing at least pockets where this delta between where the tools are today as a builder and how the enterprises are, but maybe they're moving a bit faster? Is the legal practice moving a little faster? We know that it's affected SaaS bottom line, but are the SaaS companies, specifically, I don't know, Salesforce and things like that, moving faster or not? Are you seeing any glimpses of hope.
Yeah. So the, like what the SaaS apocalypse is really this notion that it's like, these companies are doing great. They're killing it on their earnings. They're getting customers. They're growing. However, it's the reflection on what's happening. Their valuations is not a reflection of how they're doing today. Like the stock price is always about like, how is this company going to perform, 10 years from now, right? Because that's how the value is accrued. It's like it's a multiple on their current earnings. So it's like anywhere between 10x to 15 to 16 to 20. So if you take that and you say, okay, is this company going to make the same amount of money in 10 years or more, or grow? It's like that's the calculation. So today, like these companies are doing great, right? SaaS companies are doing great, but like you see the erosion and the acceleration. So nobody's building their own Workday or nobody's building their own, kind of CRM, and that's not really happening. And the companies that are the incumbents that have the data moats, meaning that they own the system of record, et cetera, those are companies that are benefiting because they can now build more on top of them. They can build the workflows on top with agents. So the agents are becoming essentially, if you think about like what a system of record is, it's just data about a company. But then the human layer is or all the employees are the ones that are producing the workflows, and they have the knowledge in their head. And that's what a company is all about, right? That's where all the value is, in their processes, in their workflows, how people do stuff. But if you take that and you put it into agents, and now you codify a company, it's like then it becomes the system of workflows or system of...
It's the new operating system, right? Is the OS for the organization.
The OS for organization, right? So it's the skills, it's all those things. So they get codified into agents, right? So the workflows are the value. And these companies that own the data, they're also now moving into agents. You see Notion moving into that. You see Salesforce moving into that. So Element started that process last year with Bolt and Bolt agents. And we've had to pull customers along to say, hey, you no longer need to do this thing manually and kind of press buttons. Let an agent do it and codify that process and let the agent do it. It's just that a lot of companies, like I said, are not moving along faster, right? They're not moving along that fast. So that's kind of where the value is in the market. I don't think it's because, they're not valuable. It's just because like today, like you're seeing them 10 years in the future, and nobody really knows what's happening in 10 years. So it's like, holy shit, in 2 years we could have AGI and they can, you know what I mean? Like the value of these companies can go down because there's going to be winners and there's going to be losers. It's just that people are just taking a broad stroke and saying, you know what, every one of these is going to be losers. I don't want to risk anything. So if you're a little bit more risk prone, I guess now it's the time to get into it. Maybe, I don't know, find some winners.
Probably. So quick translation for us in the higher education sector: look at your tech stack. And whatever tool you have, it has to have an agent something that powers your workflows and things like that. And if it's not having it, that service that you're getting, two things will come out of it. Very soon they're going to launch their agent for whatever it is that tool does. And if it doesn't, be careful, be mindful that this company, it's falling significantly behind. So one generalized takeaway. Ardis, let's pivot to some of the news that we have. And I'd like to start with Apple, because this is a story that nobody's talking about. March 3rd, so basically just last week, they did a product announcement. M5 Pros, M5 Max, chips, phones, the works. And it got covered the normal way as a hardware refresh, but this is not a normal hardware refresh, right? And you and I covered Apple in the past. One of the things that you and I also agreed on is that we were disappointed at, the Apple play as it relates to AI. This is actually very significant, and I'd like to see if you feel the same way I'm feeling, right? Apple has introduced a AI accelerator that is baked in the entire hardware infrastructure. So think about how it relates to their, chips, M1s, M4s, right? This M5 right now, because it comes with baked AI accelerators to their GPUs kind of infrastructure, It means that it will be processing AI workflows at an 8x faster than an M1, 4x than an M4. When it comes to LLM prompts, the stats showcase that it'll be almost 7 times faster than the current chips that they have. When it comes to image generation, 7.8 faster. So this infrastructure in chips and hardware, natively it's common multi-model, AI friendly through LLMs, image, the works. At the same time, the M5 comes with a layer of memory that allows the bandwidth and the computational power to run any serious large language models locally. So your entire device, privately or connected to the cloud, or even without the cloud, right, could become an engine of AI, I guess, output, if you will. So why is this super strategic and different to me? Well, you see Amazons and Googles and Microsoft and Meta, just basically spending thousands of dollars and billions of dollars on AI infrastructure. There's something uniquely different here, that the bet that Microsoft is doing is that they know that the distribution network, I don't know how many users, the
2.5 to 3 billion devices.
Active devices.
3 billion, almost 3 billion devices, yeah.
Yes, becomes that layer of deployment. And this is the last point on the news. The price point of these devices, the MacBook Neo, the iPhone 17e, the iPad Air, all coming at $600. So for the first time, Apple Intelligence available at $600. They never operated that price point. So there's something very strategic in this expansion, and it's addressing the on-device AI layer, not just a product launch, but AI layer. So what does that mean for higher education? And then I'd love to see where your head is at. This is so exciting because now what we're starting to see higher education professionals is that student showing up, most likely a student, has a device that doesn't have to be connected to your infrastructure, can be running state-of-the-art AI. The consumption of AI not longer needs cloud connectivity at the same time. That's, I guess, another one. The cost for infrastructure, cloud services, all that kind of gets dismantled. So it's disrupting the service or the way the services are built. And more importantly, the expectations that they will have, because now they can run these very complicated workflows, if you will, from a local device, whether you call it an iPad, a phone, or a laptop. So, Ardis, when you saw this story, did you make serial connections? How, just tell me from off the top, how do you think this story lands to you?
Yeah. So when you think about what is the output of AI today, when you think about what's the fundamental component of it, it's tokens, right? So you introduce token generation or this intelligence. So think about it as intelligence. And whenever you want to do a task or that can be, hey, rewrite this sentence to just fix this image for me, to generate a new essay for me or whatever it is, right? All of those workflows, all of those things require intelligence or they require this token generation. And behind that token generation, there is a model that's running. And those can be large language models, those can be image models, they can be AI models. And these models require hardware to run on, and they require parallelism and acceleration or AI specific hardware. So NVIDIA is obviously the big one, and there's a lot of specialized chips to run a lot of these models. So the larger the model, the more capable it is, the more intelligence it is, the bigger, the more hardware you need. And then in order to train these models, you really need really big hardware because you have the amount of data and everything. It's so incredible. So you go from, two different things in here. So there is the training part, and that's the hardware that the companies in NVIDIA, and it's working on the cloud. They do inference as well. But then in order for our day-to-day work and in order for students to kind of benefit from this, or even us, we need those tokens, those inference tokens. And it doesn't matter where they get generated right now, because these models, some of the larger frontier models are on the cloud. We hit the APIs and they get generated in data centers. But the more specialized models become and the better the smaller models are, and the hardware kind of coming in and meeting them, those models can now be on device. So the latency becomes zero, right? So latency goes down to zero. it kind of benefits tremendously because it feels like a real conversation. There you have full privacy, on device, right? You can work offline, so like you don't get disrupted. Think about the outage from Claude Code, when like it was so funny because like this week or last week there was 2 outages from Claude Code and people were just complaining. And so it's like, imagine like your whole company not being able to function because Claude Code is not working. So that's kind of where this becomes really important, right? And then the cost becomes really interesting as well, because you have the hardware. It's like the per token cost is just zero. There's like zero cost per token. And then you can do depersonalization because he has your entire context there forever. So you take those things and then you start thinking, it's like, okay, what could be like, what is Apple's play here? Apple, I don't think they had a strategy, to be honest, around this. I think they just fumbled on it. And then they're like, holy shit, we have the best hardware. Let's just put more intelligence in there. And eventually, this thing is going to, like, the edge computing is going to be a thing, and intelligence is moving to the edge now. So
Ardis, define what edge computing is.
So edge computing is the device that you carry with you. It's like the last mile. So you don't have to be connected to the internet or anything like that. It's actually the intelligence or the computing that's on the at the end of the network, right? That you're interacting with. So like I said, they can be a phone, they can be a laptop, they can be an iPad, they can be like a whatever. Yeah, anything, a smart device like Alexa. Yeah,
exactly. How we consumers probably relate to AI today, right?
Yep.
So not from the enterprise point of view. The strategy, it's just basically a B2C strategy, whether they've conceived it or they ran into it. And I really like how you said that it just breaks this assumption that AI requires cloud connectivity, right? I cannot produce this intelligence. I cannot generate my Shakespearean-inspired emails to my team, right? Without AI connected to the internet and passing, basically doing the exchange of, here's my information, here's my prompt, send back the thing that I need, right? So that is exactly fascinating. And I really think that last point, it's super interesting. The cost of producing intelligence, not to use tokens, the cost of producing intelligence is zero. Because if I put in $600, there's a sunk cost.
You can run it forever, right?
And you can run it forever. So fascinating.
Until next year, till the new iPhone becomes available. But yeah.
So from a strategic point of view, I think it seems that you think it's a good play, right? It's not competing on cloud; it's competing on the edge. So the strategy lands for you. Where do you think it goes next from here?
So we're actually, well, this is really interesting because privacy, it's a really big thing. So AI is going to be part of every piece of our lives. And when you think about it, it's like privacy and private data and things that like you need to keep those private. So right now, when we're building Andy, like that was one of the bets that we're making, is that, like there's 2 bets that we're making, is that everybody is going to have, it's going to need an AI assistance, and you're going to need, and then the verticalization in like the family or specialization in a particular age group, which is kind of the family, part of it is kind of special. But then what we're betting on is that everybody, voice is going to be the next big thing, right? That everybody's going to interact with via voice, and that models are going to get really good, and we're going to solve the privacy thing that people are worried about, their kids' data leaving their devices or encryption or all of these things. Like, we're betting that things are going to get better and better and more private, so the inference is going to happen on device. So that's going to be instantaneous. So it solves the voice problem, because voice needs a lot of back and forth. So these models can live on device. It can be much more natural. Plus, it can solve the data privacy problem, because now the data doesn't have to live, and then parents can share a lot more context with these models, so they don't have to worry about it. And it can always be on, right? So we don't have to think about the internet anymore. You don't have to think about all these different things. It's on device. So that's kind of what we're betting on. So in 2 years or 3 years, this is amazing, because it all kind of plays up to kind of that future as models get better and the devices get better, edge computing becomes a thing, intelligence becomes localized, private, and then becomes more personal as well, because he has all that context.
All right. Well, let's move to the next story. Apple is making AI local. Got that. But now we have SpaceX making the network universal. Of course, I'm thinking, what is the space story? Elon Musk story I need to plug in here. Thank you, SpaceX, for doing this basically this week, right? So the headline is so simple. SpaceX just spent billions of dollars to become your next phone company. What does that mean, right? So it's an investment picture. Let me first paint the picture as it relates to investment. $19.6 billion purchased to purchase a satellite spectrum from EchoStar. This is something that the FCC regulates, how you can control bandwidth and space, telephone, radio, even, I don't know, blenders could have a bandwidth. So these larger cellular communications, think of your company, I don't know, Verizon, they have a spectrum of their own. So SpaceX makes that investment sometime in the past. Second investment that they also made is that they expanded the agreement by another $2.6 million this past November. So a total investment of $22 billion in cellular spectrum. Why? Because they have this infrastructure of satellites that right now can allow you to basically move a token of information, call it a phone call, and bounces back and transmits somewhere else, limiting the infrastructure that you need today to make a phone call, which is a tower. That's why many of us go hiking, go to trips in the middle of nowhere, and there's no coverage. The play here is that the satellite infrastructure that they already built could have functioned that way. But this is the other thing that they've done. They created a layer of satellites that comes closer to the atmosphere. In other words, it moves closer to us, so the signal delay and the bandwidth that they can carry, it's faster, better, and they can also do things like 5G for us. So in other words, they have a satellite cellular network that exists on a phone, a new hardware probably required for it. It works everywhere, regardless whether there's a cell tower within range. Let me just take you through the developing world. You know how expensive it is to have connectivity when there's just the one family in the middle of nowhere? And it's, this is the difference between the rural access and urban access, right? And for years, we've been trying to solve that. That problem right now is solved. The idea that the digital divide, cell phone, internet, it's accessible to all of us. We had internet through Starlink, and now we have cell phone. That's basically the problem that they solved. Now let me go into the commercial aspect. In March 2026, Starlink Mobile has officially hit 10 million subscribers. SpaceX goal is to have 25 million by the end of the year. This is an incredible acquisition, and not an incredible acquisition, an incredible ramp up, and they know it's doable. If there's a place, Ardis, where I would love to invest today, it's actually in one of these companies. By the way, rumor is that the IPO is forthcoming. So what does this mean, and how do we connect connectivity to higher education? The first thing is it connects to the prior story, as in the bet is Apple. I'm killing the cloud, and I'm basically going local. In this case, it's SpaceX. It's doubling down in the need for bandwidth, and now accessible everywhere. Infrastructure story, right? It's an infrastructure story with enormous AI deployment at scale. Now, the models that require cloud, of basically high compute bandwidth type of relationships, will be neutralized, and you can access this power in rural communities, agricultural extensions to your programs, institutions. If you're in the middle of nowhere, don't worry about it, because this type of service would probably cover your entire campus, right? So for higher education, the access question just got reframed. Ardis, I'm sure this story put a smile on your face. So tell us, what do you think?
Yeah, no, the Starlink has been amazing. Like I've had a Starlink now for about a year or so. I don't use it as my primary, but internet goes down here all the time, and I have Spectrum, and I'm like, okay, I don't have to worry about it. I just put Starlink on, and it's just I got internet, cars internet. So that's just one small thing, and then the wireless coverage is just crappy in here where I am. So it's like I get it 1 bar, and it's like, come on, but the thing that is kind of very exciting about this is that, yes, Starlink is the story and kind of how everything is going towards Starlink. So now you're going to have connectivity. I don't know if you have been in any of the airplanes with Starlink on it. So this is United that has added Starlink as part of it. And the people who have experienced
I'm only on the Delta ones that every other flight. Oh, sorry, internet is not available right now.
Correct. Yeah, I'm a Delta person, so I'm not a United, but from all the stories that I hear, like they just think it's the most incredible thing ever because they can now do video call, they can watch Netflix, they can
I
do
saw
everything
that
on,
in my social
yeah.
feed where someone very annoyingly was doing a video call while in first class going, I don't know, transatlantic, whatever there is a long flight. So
Uh-huh.
now I guess there's the new airline artist that comes with a quiet cabin. But anyway, that's a different story.
There's a quiet. Yeah, that's a first class plus or first class quiet.
I know.
So the part that's really interesting about this, JC, is that SpaceX is kind of what made this possible, right? And a lot of folks are talking about so the number one thing that SpaceX, like what they're optimizing for, is moving stuff to space the cheapest, right? So it's like, what is the price per kilogram or per pound to move to space? And then they're trying to get that ratio down as fast as possible. And in order to do that, like the side project was, oh, we can do this now. Like we can move a lot of stuff into space. Well, guess what's the first thing that we're going to do? We're going to put satellites in there. So they have the largest constellation of satellites, which is about 12,000 plus satellites up there. And this is kind of what you're getting. That's the side effect of this technology. The benefits are going to be tremendous. I think for education, you can now have connectivity anywhere in the world, so you can be connected. So, like, remember when we started this online learning journeys during COVID, and all of the families who are rural families they're still on dial-up, and et cetera, like they were falling behind. Well, there's no equity there, so it's like education became very inequitable. And people who did not have the right connectivity, they basically suffered from that. As education becomes more and more, non-central, but becomes online and becomes kind of connected,
yeah, that's
accessible, right? So this accessibility makes a huge difference. Now pair that with what the story that we had before. It's like you don't have to pay for intelligence anymore because it's on a device, right? Even though the device can be $600. You can now get ChatGPT. You don't have to pay $20 or $100 or $200.
You get it once,
and then the institution doesn't have to give it to you. It's like it's all in intelligence is there, connectivity is there. So now you have a better platform for learning. You have a better platform for collaboration and all these different things all over the world. So I think it's really good.
An important point for everybody to understand, right, is that cellular connectivity, right, today on the places that you kind of feel that is not strong, right, it requires a telecom provider, Verizon or T-Mobile, whomever, to come and build an antenna, right, some type of tower, and cover that area. This type of deployment satellite, it requires a ship to take a satellite and poof, go to somewhere in the atmosphere and drop that satellite. Why do I explain it that way? Is that, Ardis, this is a monopoly. There's no way a telecom can now do what SpaceX is doing, right? So if I was looking at some stats, it would require about 64 launches to cover the entire world. I mean, the cost per launch, it's so impossible for any other company to come and duplicate because this is where SpaceX has 20 years ahead of anybody. So it's a really interesting value proposition that now we're talking about a different type of telecom layer and nobody can come and compete. The bandwidth competition that we see Verizon's or T-Mobile's compete, it's very neutralized. It's like, hey, I'm going to go put a tower in that mountain, right? They all can do it. And it will cost them about the same. This is very different. Now, last question so we can move to the next story. Can you say more about, all right, what does universal cellular connectivity and AI access to? So you painted one picture, which is, then I guess now I can download this software. I have it in my Mac and I can run it forever and I don't have to pay Cloud GPT, for the monthly subscription. What other use cases do you see universal cellular connectivity powering as relates to AI?
Yeah, I mean, so you see all the edge computing, right? Robotics is autonomous vehicles, robotics, like all of the things that we're talking about right now. So that's the biggest thing right now. So if you think about the Waymo, the way Waymo works in San Francisco or in some of the cities, it's all about the connectivity and when that cellular connection went down, if you remember, I don't know if there was a couple of stories that it basically all the cars were just useless. They were just aimlessly just stopped everywhere, right? You see Waymos everywhere. So now you have an always on connectivity for these autonomous devices, and they can go anywhere. They can go up in and fix, I don't know, like you can have robots fixing stuff in the middle of nowhere without human intervention because they're always connected. Now, there's a benefit to that, right? And that's as autonomous vehicles and robots and cars become more and more relevant around that. Now you can say, okay, this is hugely beneficial to have this global network. But then you also see things like, being used for war and kinetic, engagements and all that stuff, right? So you see all the drones basically now have always connectivity, so you can be in the US or you can be in kind of a different country and then have far further reach autonomously through these vehicles everywhere. So there's a good part of it, but there's always a bad part to it. But I think the autonomous vehicles with robots and Optimus and like those things are going to be amazing as we go forward. I haven't bought my Tesla yet, so I'll probably get a Tesla at some point this year, but
as I said, you got to go Rivian. But anyway, again, that's a different show. So, Ardis, the infrastructure is getting smarter. Networks are getting universal. Now, let's go into the development process because it's being rewritten. That's story number 3. In the story number 3,
this is where I'm living.
I know. This is where Anthropic just launched something that is called Cloud Code Review, and it does exactly what the name says it does. It reviews code. It's an automated code review product that integrates directly into the pull request workflow. So you open a PR, which is a push of code. Cloud reviews it. It flags if there's issues, suggests improvements, identifies security vulnerabilities, and returns a structured review in seconds. No human review required for the first pass, and increasingly nothing will be required. The reaction of the developer community has been intense. Why? Not just because it's a product, it's because this is how code is being produced. This is so ingrained in how code reviewed it's being produced. A team needs to maintain, quality and spread the knowledge and, share the standards. But there's also adjacent team that is doing similar type of things for, review, right? The pull request review is often the most important teaching moment in a lot of developments in the professional career of a developer. And automating this kind of also raises questions of, am I going to be able to force this coder to the next level now if she cannot review code that other coders could be doing it? Which also brings the interesting conversation about the recursive bias, because usually traditional software teams, and I think you design teams to do this, I made the code, you review it, Ardis. And that is basically a good professional standard for quality. Recursive AI bias is that if AI writes the code, right, AI now reviews it. Is that a recursive bias? Maybe not. And then finally, the pricing model, right? There's been some debate whether is, how is the billing going to take place? It is the token driven as a pool per request and things of that sort. Obviously, the adjacent stories is OpenAI and other major providers are watching this launch closely and moving fast with a competitive alternative. So very soon, we're probably going to have, 3 or 4 probably versions of this outside the Anthropic ecosystem. What does it mean for higher education? Computer science programs, your boot camps, your digital transformation teams, they all depend on models of software that are developed and written in real time. The skills we're teaching, the workflows we're managing, the roles that we're hiring for are all in motion. And the institutions that treats this as a distant disruption rather than a present one will be caught flat-footed. Ardis, you build software you've been building software for the past 20 years. Recursive bias, pricing. How is this shaping what you do?
Well, so the kind of what we call right now the flood, we talked about what's top of mind for me and like the things that have changed over the last 3 months is that this coding, coding agents have gotten so good, and like most of the code is being generated actually at AI Idea Lab and Andy, like where all the code is being written by AI, right? And all agentic code. So when you do that, then
In your company, can I just repeat that? In your companies, all the code is being done by agents.
Yes, 100% of it. I haven't written one line of code by hand.
That's fascinating. Keep on going, please.
So because AI can generate a lot of code very, very quickly, the problem has become, it's real, like where you need to review that code, right? And the again, like Anthropic is just kind of solving that problem, right? Where you review code to see like, okay, is this good? Is it not good? Does it match the does it fit the problem? Is there things that you can optimize, et cetera, et cetera? Right now, there's a lot of models that can do that, and we go through that process of reviewing the code, but somebody needs to review it. And the writing of the code is agents are writing it, but now you need specialized agents in order to review this code for bugs. You need to review it for flow. You need to review it for coherence to regression to. So there's all of these things that you review code against, certain parameters and security. So, those are things that are getting missed right now. So people are writing a lot of code and they're putting it out there, people who don't know anything about code or security or anything. And that's why right now there's a proliferation of like a lot of AI, what people call AI slop, because you're putting things out there that are not secure because you're just not a security expert. So you didn't write the code and you're like, okay, AI did great. But in order to prompt that AI to do the right things, those agents, like they're just writing stuff, and then you need to be good about like looking at introspecting it and then following up with it and following, you know what I mean? Like you need to have an understanding of all that process and how it works.
That's really a good point.
So what Anthropic is doing, and this is other companies are doing very similar things, like Cognition has a one as well. Devin was the first AI engineer that we talked about, but what Anthropic is doing, they're basically saying, okay, we're building specialized agents that are going to review your code based on a lot of these different things, like based on whatever it is. And these agents, we're going to spin up 10, 20, 30 agents, and your code base can be really, really large. So these are going to consume so many tokens that it's going to cost about $10 to $15 to $20 to do a review of your code, which is really cheap when you think about it, because you can, one person taking an hour to review a pull request versus, like 10 or 20 different agents reviewing everything is just so much more cost effective. But people are used to like just having a $20 subscription and saying, well, it's fine. Like I'm just going to use that for everything. And the whole notion of mature code review that goes into production in large organizations, that's very, very real, and people need it, and we need it to produce systems that are, fortified and they're not just slop, right? So I feel, I don't know, it's a really good product. I haven't tested it yet. But I feel like this is the next, like when AI can produce infinite amount of code, like who reviews that code? Humans cannot do it anymore. Like we just can't keep up with it. And that's where the problems a lot of organizations are seeing.
The silver line that I have in this story that you just mentioned is that mature code review in terms of quality and improvements, it's a holistic practice. You need an expert on everything, and it's very expensive. And it's a need for good software deployment for us consumers and other enterprises. Now that is basically touched the agentic world and the AI world, and is made it in an AI fashion, is scalable, accessible, and of course, reproducible across. I want to go to the next story, and I'm going to just read the highlights and going to love for you to explain what does this mean, because our next story deals with Andrew Karpathy, who is the co-founder of OpenAI, former head of Tesla AI, one of the most respected technical minds in the field. He open source a 630 line Python script called Author Research, and it got 8.6 million views in X in 2 days. What does it do? Basically, what he thought is, let me give a small agent a small language model training setup. The agent reads its own source code, forms a hypothesis for improvement, think about, let me change the learning rate or like a small change in architecture, whatever. It modifies the code, runs the experiment for 5 minutes, check whether the results improved, and then keeps or discards the change. Then it does it again and again and again. It could run, 12 experiments per hour. While you sleep, maybe 100 experiments were done. You are waking up to work that is being done in front of us. This is a whole reframing of how we start thinking about experiments, from us, the humans, being the experimenter, to the experimental designer. And this is so incredible. Right now it's seen more for the research agenda of some institutions, but I see so many applications. And I'll leave you with this one. Most marketing teams today in higher education, admissions, communications, you're running experiments per year. Maybe you don't know. Call it 30 per year. The next generation will run 3,000 experiments, 36,000 experiments, whatever. The computing advantage is not 10x here. It's basically 100 or 1,000x in how this learning experimentation can come and inform what we do in enrollment management, admissions, and overall marketing in universities. Ardis, explain this story. What does it mean to do auto research, and kind of how generalize this very interesting drop from Karpathy, who actually, for everybody who doesn't know, he coined the term vibe coding as well. So what do you think of this one, Ardis?
Yeah, so a lot of folks have been playing around with what we call agent loops now, right? And this is kind of the whole thing about agent loops, because one of the things that agents are really good at is you give it a task and then they complete that task. But then how do you give it a goal, and then they can run on the loop and then kind of go through iteration after iteration after iteration after iteration. So right now we have this notion of like Claude Code, et cetera, et cetera. Like you don't just call a model and then get the results back and that's it. It's like they run through this agent loops, right? They reason about it, they do to-do tasks, et cetera, et cetera. So what Karpathy has been building now for the past, I don't know, however long, he has this open source projects that he's basically trying to say, okay, how do you, like, for learning purposes, how do you train your own large language model? And he's building kind of these training sets and open source libraries so you can train a GPT-2 model, right? So one of the things that what you're talking about is this notion that the agent is looking at the code that it's building or that's training the large language model, and it's kind of coming up with experiments, trying those experiments, and then trying other experiments to see if they work, and then kind of apply those and compound. So this idea of compounding becomes really, really important. So the agent runs on the loop, tries experiments, and then builds on top of it. And what he found is that this is super important, and it's an optimization problem. And it's finding that large language models now are really good at coming up with the experiments to run and thinking through these novel ideas to change how they're training themselves. Obviously, this is a small one, so it's only changing for training a model that is GPT-2. But think about like where this becomes really interesting for training very, very intelligent models, where like you can have a self-recursive model that can train itself, or they can improve itself over time, right? But this is also can be used for research as well. So think about in any area of research, and this is very useful for higher education because a lot of research that gets done in the labs, et cetera, you have an experiment or you have an idea. PhD students or whatever, they have an idea, and then they spend the semester or the year kind of chasing out that idea to see if it's working or not.
My PhD is an idea. What that's just happened here is that my PhD, or a lot of PhDs, can be done in 24 hours.
Right.
I'm not joking.
Yeah. So you can exactly. So but the model can come up with hundreds or thousands of these, and they can test them and see which one works. Right before this call, JC, this is very useful. So one of the things that we're working on is on prompt optimization, right? It's like, how do I optimize prompts, right? And you have what you call kind of evaluation sets, eval sets, and these are think about them as
source of truth.
Basically optimization function. It's like, hey, this should work this way, right? And that's an evaluation set. And then you give it an input and you say, okay, here's this thing, modify this thing in order to get closer to this output. And it's a pass or fail or pass. So now you have a system that is optimizing the prompt, it's optimizing the skill, it's optimizing, and it's running through. And I have for Andy, we have kind of the core prompt, and we're for the Kid Companion, and we're running it. I've been running it since last night, and it's like 8 hours of continuously running through and optimizing that prompt based on the hundreds of evaluation sets of different things, from like how do you handle questions around Santa to how do you handle questions around puberty, et cetera, right? So those are like, I would not be able to come up with the permutations of that prompt or the system, guardrails, et cetera, in order to make it, fit those evals, right? Those guardrails. So it's like the system is optimizing. It's using, I don't know, but so it's amazing.
I was in a conference speaking yesterday, and how do I do AI so that it stays within the guardrails of my policy, right? Because we know that AI is very good at sometimes being creative, and then directionally it gets there. But what you're just telling us is now that we have a methodology for knowing an authoritative source of truth, this is what good looks like. Just figure out a way to get there better, faster. And those type of not only experiments, but learning modalities are also emerging. My gosh, Ardis, we've had a fun and incredible conversation.
Yeah, this has been great. We're all over the place.
That's the point. It's exactly what I needed. Someone to basically comment on 4 different work streams and potentially how they all get stitched up or not. So 4 signals, but there's also one signal. AI and agentic AI is moving the way we work and shaping the way we work. Ardis, before we go, any thoughts, anything that you like to talk about or mention?
No, this has been great. Thanks for having me back.
All right. What do you think, my friend? Am I doing better without you? I mean, there's never going to be another Gen AI, but what do you think, man? Do I get an A, a B, a C? What's happening here?
It's like you can always optimize for better, right? So maybe a B plus, or I don't know, A minus.
I need an agent loop on what good is, and I'm going to be using Gen AI as that source of truth. Well, let me stitch up this together. 4 stories, 1 signal. Apple is moving AI to the edge. Your devices become the compute layer. Starlink is moving connectivity to everywhere, so no more blank spots on the map. Anthropic is moving AI into development loops. The work of building software is being fundamentally restructured. And Karpathy just showed us what happens when you apply agentic loops to research itself, to reconstruct experimentation as we know it. The signal across all these stories is simple. AI is collapsing the distance between thinking something and doing something. Let me say that again. AI is collapsing the distance between thinking something and doing something, between having a hypothesis and testing it, between identifying a problem and actually solving. Like Ardis said, all the code in his products are now built by AI. For institutions, universities, agencies, and companies who listen to us, understand what the compression means for you and your people and your teams. This is about doing things faster and doing them better now. Ardis, thank you for being here, my friend. Always a pleasure. Where can people find you today if they wanted to chat with you about what you're up to?
Yeah, you can always reach me on LinkedIn. I haven't been as active on LinkedIn because I've been building, but you can also reach me at ardis@aidealab.ai.
There you go. Or the phone number 917. I'm just joking.
Yeah.
All right, everybody.
I still have a 718.
718 something. Thank you, everybody, and thank you, Ardis. Until next time.
Thanks, guys. Thanks, JC.
Thanks for listening to Higher Intelligence. This show is part of the Enrollify network, home to the largest collection of podcasts in higher education. Enrollify is where higher ed goes to grow. You can find more podcasts, webinars, videos, blogs, and more. Visit Enrollify.org and subscribe to get new content sent directly to your inbox. Enrollify is brought to you by Element 451, the AI agent platform for higher education. Learn more at element451.com.